begin. Welcome to the first annual City of Chino Veterans Day ceremony. My name is Wes Simmons, and I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Chino. And it is my honor, thank you. Thank you, and it is my honor to preside over today's ceremony. To begin, please stand as the Chino Valley Young Marines present the colors and remain standing for the national anthem, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and an invocation.
Lord God, forward, march, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right. Hello, righty, left, right, march, time, march, left, 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 right. Good God, halt. Good God, face. Like this. Step. Out forward. Face. Forward. March. Good God. Present. Arms.
The national anthem will be performed by Don Lugo High School student Andrea Salge. Accompanying Andrea are Ashley and Alyssa Farrell from the Girl Scout Troop 10154, who will be signing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly gleaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Out forward. Face. Forward. March. Right wheel. March. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right. Forward. March. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right.
Thank you, Andrea. That was incredible. And let's hear it for our young Marines. Now, Tommy Baker from Cub Scout Pack 201, would you come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Everybody in uniform, salute on the number. Everyone else, hand over heart. 1. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2.
Thank you, Tommy, and Cub Scout Pack 201. And Ashley and Alyssa, thank you guys very much. Now I'd like to ask Pastor Roy Robbins to come up for the invocation.
First off, I just want to thank the city for asking me to be here today. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you all. Let us pray. Today we're here to honor those that have served our country and given their lives so that we may stand here and still live in freedom. Almighty God, we ask that you constantly remind us of the gift of freedom and of those who gave, ensuring that future generations enjoy life in a free, democratic society. Lord, we give you thanks for these men and women who've defended our country and the values of freedom and justice that we hold so dear. Help us to be ever mindful of the sacrifices they made and the hardships endured by their families and friends, so that we never take for granted the privileges that they have secured for us. Father, you are a God of justice, but overflowing with grace and mercy. Help us to feel your love to overflowing and to take that joy to a hurting world. Teach us to be more like you each and every day. Thank you again for these men and women, and a special salute to the veterans in attendance here today. We lift up this prayer to you, O Lord, in the strong name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
The recognition of Veterans Day is an important day for our nation. Its origin and history are an essential part of who we are as Americans. To share with us this history, please welcome Private First Class Meehan of the Chino Valley Young Marines, who will come forward and read the history of Veterans Day.
The History of Veterans Day by Martin Kelly. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, World War I ended. This day became known as Armistice Day. In 1921, an unknown World War I American soldier was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Similarly, unknown soldiers have been buried in England at Westminster Abbey and at France at the Arc de Triomphe. All of these memorials took place on November 11th to commemorate the end of the war to end all wars. In 1926, Congress resolved to officially call November 11th Armistice Day. Then in 1938, the day was named a national holiday. Soon afterwards, war broke out in Europe and World War II began. Soon after the end of World War II, a veteran of that war named Raymond Weeks organized National Veterans Day with a parade and festivities to honor all veterans. We choose to hold this day on Armistice Day. Thus began annual observances of a day to honor all veterans, not just the end of World War I. In 1954, Congress officially passed and President Dwight Eisenhower signed a bill proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day. Due to his part in the creation of this national holiday, Raymond Weeks received the Presidential Citizens Medal from President Ronald Reagan in November of 1982. In 1968, Congress changed the national commemoration of Veterans Day to the fourth Monday in October. However, the significance of November 11th was such that the changed date never really got established. In 1978, Congress returned the observance of Veterans Day to its traditional date. Thank you.
Thank you, Private First Class Meehan. The 5 branches of the United States Armed Forces are represented by flags, among other emblems and insignias. Within each branch, various flags fly on various occasions on various ships, bases, camps, and military academies. To honor the 5 branches of the United States Armed Forces, we asked families to represent each branch and everyone who is currently serving or who has served. Each flag will be posted to their branch within the Liberty Courtyard. We will begin with the flag of the United States Army. Representing the United States Army and Private First Class Seth A. Martin is his father, Robert W. Martin, who is a Marine Corps veteran. If you or a loved one are currently serving or who have served in the United States Army, please stand while we post the Army flag. This will defend. I would like to also specifically acknowledge Chino Police Corporal and Army veteran Trevor Gray. Trevor grew up in this community, and after graduating from Chino High School, he enlisted in the Army, where he served for 8 years and went on 2 tours of duty to Iraq as a staff sergeant. Trevor Gray, thank you, and thank you all to our veterans. You may be seated. Next, we have the flag of the United States Marine Corps. Representing the United States Marine Corps and Corporal Santiago Benjamin Sotelo is his father, Benjamin Sotelo. If you or a loved one are currently serving or have served in the United States Marine Corps, please stand while we post the Marine Corps flag, which is especially meaningful to me as my father served in the Marines from 1956 to 1960. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Thank you. You may be seated. Next, we have the flag of the United States Navy. Representing the United States Navy and Petty Officer 3rd Class Jacob Ryan Smith is his father, Billy Smith, who also has a daughter that is a United States Army veteran. If you or a loved one are currently serving or have served in the United States Navy, please stand while the Navy flag is being posted. Semper Fortis, always courageous. Thank you for your service. You may be seated. I would also like to acknowledge Chino Police and Navy veteran, records technician, Rebecca Weber. Rebecca, I believe, is in the back there. She served for 4 years in the United States Navy, obtaining the rank of Gunnery Mate, Petty Officer 2nd Class. Thank you, Rebecca, for your service. Next, we have the flag of the United States Air Force. Representing the United States Air Force and Airman Brittany Hernandez are her grandfather, Henry Hernandez, who is an Air Force veteran, and her sisters, Jacqueline Hernandez and brother Jude Hernandez. If you or a loved one are currently serving or have served in the United States Air Force, please stand while we post the Air Force flag. Aim high, fly, fight, win. Thank you all for your service. You may be seated. To conclude, we have the United States Coast Guard. Representing the United States Coast Guard and Chief Petty Officer Michael Weezar is his sister, Susie Crucenso. If you or a loved one are currently serving or have served in the United States Coast Guard, please stand for the posting of the Coast Guard flag. Semper Paratus, always ready. Thank you. Please join me in thanking each of the Armed Forces families for honoring their family members and our veterans today. It is my pleasure now to take a moment and welcome some of our special guests and dignitaries that are joining us today. Our Mayor, Eunice Uloa, and her husband, Bob, who is a Navy veteran. Mayor Pro Tem Tom Howie and his wife, Karen. Thank you for being here. Council Member Mark Lucio. Thank you for being here. Council Member Dr. Paul Rodriguez. Thank you. Our city manager, Matt Ballantyne. Representing County Supervisor Kurt Hagman, Melissa Campani. Thank you. Community Services Commissioner Chairperson Jamie Harwood. Community Services Commissioner Bobby Martinez. Community Services Commissioner Gregory Marquez. Community Services Commissioner Brenda Strong. And Community Services Commissioner Linda Takeuchi, whose husband Martin is also an Air Force veteran. Thank you, Martin, for your service. The most important VIPs who are here today are, of course, our veterans. If you are a veteran, please stand one more time so we can recognize each of you corporately. Thank you. Thank you for your service. And at this time, I'd like to invite up Mayor Eunice Ulloa to share some special words about Veterans Day.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for joining us on this 11th day of the 11th month, at the 11th hour, to honor those that have dedicated their lives to protecting this great country. I want to begin today by recognizing all those among us who have been part of the great brotherhood and sisterhood we call the U.S. military. Our veterans, active duty service members, guardsmen, and reservists. It's your service and sacrifice that has kept our country safe and free. Once again, please stand or raise your hand to be recognized. No matter which branch you served in, whatever your job path or how many years you served, you committed yourselves to service in the military, a commitment to early mornings and late nights, to grueling physical training, to facing our worst fears, all with few guarantees and many unknowns. For the benefit of our great nation, you entrusted your lives, and in some ways that of your families, to our military without knowing where you would be assigned, whether or where you might be deployed, and the level of bodily and emotional risk you would face. By taking up the charge, bearing the physical burden of jobs that require more courage than most of us can muster, the rest of us in America can sleep peacefully at night. Military men and women know the risks, but they accept them so that others won't have to. Veterans are defenders of our freedom, protectors of our principles, unofficial ambassadors of justice, and guardians of American democracy. Veterans are everywhere. They are our neighbors, teachers, custodians, postal workers, doctors, and store clerks. And we should thank them personally on Veterans Day and every day for their service to our country. Throughout our city, city banners hang with the names of many veterans from Chino that serve in the armed forces. Currently, 183 banners hang as part of the city's military banner program. Of these, 131 serve in the Army, 92 in the Marines, 62 in the Air Force, 89 in the Navy, and 9 in the Coast Guard. Since the program's inception, the names of 383 participants have been proudly displayed to honor their service and to ensure that they remain in our thoughts and prayers. We need to remind ourselves and teach our youth to esteem and appreciate veterans. In these times, it may appear that respect and gratitude are in short supply. So it's incumbent upon us to set the example by demonstrating our high regard for these peacekeepers and obligating ourselves to assist those that have kept us safe. We gather today to recognize veterans in our community and express our gratitude. There are many opportunities throughout the year for us to give back in return. You can find volunteer opportunities such as going grocery shopping or running errands for veterans in your community, doing yard work or painting a veteran's home. I assure you there's a veteran out there that can use your help. I want to thank you all for being here today to show our soldiers our appreciation. God bless you all. May God bless all of our veterans, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd also like to point out Commissioner Walt Polcock, who is here today. Our first guest speaker is the commander of the 492nd Attack Squadron at March Air Reserve Base, which was activated on April 15th of this year to support the 163rd Attack Wing MQ-9's formal training mission. He graduated with distinction and received a commission as a distinguished graduate of the Air Force Reserve Officers Training Corps at Clarkson University, New York. As an extended-range C-130 pilot and aircraft commander, he flew combat missions in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and humanitarian missions in Africa. In Air Force Special Command, he was an MQ-1 Predator instructor pilot and flight examiner and supported missions in Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, and Freedom Sentinel. Prior to his current position, he was Director of Operations at the 17th Attack Squadron in Creech Air Force Base, Nevada. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Trevor J. Larrabee of the United States Air Force.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. So looking out the beautiful faces of the people of Chino, I'm a guest. So the City Council recruited me going through the protocol office at the 452nd Air Mobility Wing and the 163rd Attack Wing. So I owe you some inspirational words. So I'm glad to be serving right now. I just need to mention that we're here to honor our Veterans Day, or our veterans here today. I'm not a rifleman. Nor have I ever hot bunked on a close quarters submarine or Navy vessel, but I would like to, hopefully I have some words of wisdom to offer you and some vignettes today that I want to share you that how our civilian and military leaders are taking care of our service members, and also describe, under the context of describing what my squadron does integrated with our total force mission partners. So truly, it's only the service members and our veterans that know what a call to arms means. Many professions have important callings, whether it's clergy or physicians, but only our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen and Coast Guardsmen are special by knowing what it takes. They know what it takes to internalize and live by service values and to fully invest their mind, body, and spirit to realize the full power of patriotism and brotherhood. To our veterans, our service members, their spouses, and their families and friends, I thank you. I'm fortunate to have an opportunity to command an Air Force squadron. It's truly the best job an Air Force officer can have, the opportunity to lead, especially a squadron as unique as ours. First, we are total force. So what does that mean? We combine active duty forces with California Air National Guard and along with civilian and contract personnel. Second, we're also in a location where our airmen and families truly thrive. We were literally stood up and put in Southern California to improve basing options for our career field, being the MQ-9 Reaper career field in the Air Force. We're also a heritage squadron, honoring the legacy of the 492nd Bombardment Squadron that was decommissioned in the 1960s, and we stand proudly on their shoulders. And they were a squadron that supported a World War II mission in the Eastern Campaign of China, Burma, and India. Our mission now, as a revitalized squadron, we support active duty MQ-9 Reaper instructor pilots, instructor sensor operators, maintenance personnel, medical personnel, and base operation support to the formal training MQ-9 mission at the 163rd Attack Wing. Together, we train and graduate combat-ready MQ-9 Reaper air crews to go out and protect those that are in harm's way. Our brothers and sisters, your sons and daughters. I'm proud of the Total Air Force Airmen that I'm privileged to lead. Our MQ-9 Air National Guard and active duty total force relationship has produced some amazing results. First, the 492nd Attack Squadron was able to cover the MQ-9 formal training mission to enable the 163rd Attack Wing to go out and fight and assist CAL FIRE in the California wildfires. Just this year, the 163rd Attack Wing supported the Walker Fire, and then the fire impacting so many thousands of lives in the Sonoma area. For more than 20 days and 20 nights, flying the MQ-9 Reaper overhead, mapping the fire lines, and giving CAL FIRE realistic information so they could dedicate their CAL FIRE resources to the areas that most needed them. This is a first for the 163rd Attack Wing. It's the first time we've had two simultaneous missions. First, the national mission of MQ-9 formal training alongside California domestic operations, where we're assisting CAL FIRE fight best put the resources where they're needed. Two simultaneous missions by one total force team. Another total force highlight, in October, a few of our total force airmen were able to support wing tour and briefs for several Colombian Air Force officers that just graduated professional military education. These Colombian officers were amazed of how seamlessly integrated we were, considering that we're part-time forces combined with full-time active duty forces. Plus, the number one factor, that you compare the United States Air Force or our services to the Colombian Air Force, we are a volunteer force where there is not. They are not. So they were very curious on how we were so intrinsically motivated as a total force team, or just in general, purely by being a volunteer force. So I thought that was quite impressive. Of note, so our squadron, the 492nd Attack Squadron, combined alongside the 163rd Attack Wing, are tenant units on March Air Reserve Base. The 452nd Air Mobility Wing is the installation owner, and they dwarf us in comparison. They run the busy installation, and they also execute global airlift and air refueling missions with using the C-17 and KC-130 aircraft. Overall, March Air Reserve Base provides over $600 million a year of economic impact to the Southern California area. March Air Reserve Base, still after 100 years, is still a powerful force projector, ready to protect California and defend our great nation. Now for a little history. So first controlled by the Army, March Field has a select field of alumni. Lieutenant Colonel Hap Arnold was the commander of March Field from 1931 to 1935 and became the Air Force's first and only 5-star general. General Jimmy Doolittle commanded at March Field, and just last week his granddaughter visited with our airmen and reignited and deepened the Doolittle legacy. That was incredibly powerful, seeing her communicate with our airmen. Furthermore, General Hoyt Vandenberg, General Carl Spatz, General Ira Eaker, all role models for airmen to follow in their footsteps, and are all connected to the proud lineage of March Air Reserve Base in Southern California. Now I'd like to highlight a few examples in how our military and civilian leaders have helped the MQ-9 Reaper community and our fellow airmen. Our active duty squadron was largely due in part to the efforts of Headquarters Air Force and Air Combat Command to improve the quality of life for those airmen and families in the fast-growing MQ-9 remotely piloted aircraft community. The Secretary of the Air Force approved more than $40 million to boost the infrastructure of March Air Reserve Base and add additional equipment for the Total Force mission. Together, we are BRAC-proofing March Air Reserve Base so we can continue the economic impact. So that's really great for our community. On a more personal level, our families, our school-aged children have access to better schools compared to other MQ-9 bases and locations. And for our spouses, they have higher education opportunities, and after that, they have job entry, employment opportunities where they wouldn't have at other MQ-9 bases across the country. Next, I want to share with you some remarks from the Honorable Mark Ticano. He announced to the House of Representatives a welcome to our squadron back in May of this year. He asserted that, quote, "This expansion will attract and retain new talent to March Air Reserve Base and the Air Force Reserve Command. This expansion sends a strong message to our community that March Air Reserve Base serves a vital strategic role, not only for California, but the Air Force at large. I am continually humbled by the dedication and hard work that the men and women at March Air Reserve Base perform every day. I'm also fortunate for the opportunity to provide regular updates on the 492nd Attack Squadron and the California Air National Guard Total Force Team to the Greater Riverside Military Advisory Council, downtown Riverside. I'm in awe of that council's support of March Air Reserve Base. It's also important to note that several leaders on the Greater Riverside Military Advisory Council are veterans themselves. And you can see it out here that veterans, you serve, you're going to have a career after that, and you get integrated. You become highly integrated with the community. Even with that, it's not common with only 1% or less than 1% of all Americans serving in our great nation. But that's a key aspect of having close connections, community, and our service members. Finally, I'd like to share a personal story of how a veteran in my family inspired me. My late grandfather was trained as a B-24 tail gunner nearing the end of World War II. Now, is there anyone in the audience that could potentially call me out on this story that has experience with a B-24 aircraft? Okay, because he did tell me this, the last time he told me this story, he was in his 80s, so. All right, so as a tail gunner, he was also responsible to fill a fuel tank on a backup generator near the tail of the aircraft. And before a training flight, he skipped his checklist and he forgot to pre-flight the fuel tank. So of course, despite being a training mission, on that flight, the crew had a malfunction and need to fire up that motor, but it didn't fire up because the fuel tank was empty. So thankfully, the crew was able to land safely. But once the B-24 taxied to a stop, the aircraft commander, with a face that was beet red, ran over to my grandfather and tore him up. Rightfully so. He could have killed the crew. So no one in aviation likes a scare like that. My grandfather told me that although the captain was harsh, he had earned that scolding. He continued too, because the second time he told me a story, I was nearing my commission in ROTC, and he told me, "Hey, Trevor, you may need to come down on your enlisted air crew at that like that." At first, he was very concerned. He's like, "Trevor, you're not going to be that mean, are you?" He literally had a look of concern on his face. From there, he took that message along with some other life stories in his message, and he always consistently communicated to me, quote unquote, "Always pay your tuition. We're going to make mistakes. You need to learn from that and then move forward." Reading several leadership books, over my years after that, that lesson of learning versus training comes up consistently. And it's a key aspect of learning is a key aspect of our own resilience. And that message from my grandfather has paid dividends for my Air Force career, no doubt. Those that have served and experienced that kind of military stress to some extremes know that learning is important to our own resilience. Lastly, I want to thank you. I was able to grow up, and my contemporaries and those behind me were able to grow up with communities that love and embrace us and take care of us. That wasn't the case 40 years ago. And it's because of the connectedness across the communities that's making that happen. It's amazing to see our leaders, our families, our service members supporting our veterans. Why? It's due to their personal sacrifices and the deeply rooted American patriotism that they all show us every day. And the fact that those who served before us gave us all the freedom we enjoy today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Larrabee, and for your crew's protection of our community and nation. Our next guest speaker enlisted in the United States Marine Corps 50 years ago. At the age of 17, and he was promoted 12 times during his 20-year career, including corporal, gunnery sergeant, chief warrant officer, first lieutenant, and captain. He had 7 overseas tours, visited 18 countries, and received over 41 medals, including the Meritorious Service Medal. He holds 2 Bachelor's of Science degrees, one in aeronautics and one in history. He also has a master's degree in education, as well as a California teaching credential. His second career began as a substitute teacher in 1992. He went on to be a full-time teacher in 1994 and taught science and math at Gage Middle School. And then from 1997 through 2019, he taught history at Upland High School, then at Ramona High School, and finally at our own Don Lugo High School. He was awarded Teacher of the Year twice and Most Inspirational Teacher 9 times. One of his significant accomplishments was in 2008 when he co-founded Don Lugo's Veterans We Remember program. Please welcome our own Mr. Chuck Pope.
As a retired Marine and a retired history teacher, you would think I'm going to be talking a lot, telling you a bunch of stuff, but I promise you I won't. I do like to talk. One of the things about being a Marine is that I was a drill instructor in San Diego, and I met my wife, who is also a former Marine. We've been married now for 47 years. Most of my friends that were drill instructors were getting divorced at the time. She told me last night she was glad I became a drill instructor. She didn't say that when we were married or when we were living down there. And then I had a lot of really nice jobs in the Marine Corps, and then there was a couple that I didn't like very much. But I think back about it, and you know, it was a great time of my life. Being a teacher, being able to reach out to young people was a big thing for me. I was also a high school football coach. And one of the sad things about that is that many of my former football players have come back after they joined the Marine Corps and told me that playing football for me was harder than going through boot camp. And I was hard, you know, God, how can that be? But it happens. Anyway, going back to Veterans Day and how to appreciate veterans, in 2008, myself and Tara Ragsdale, who was a co-teacher with me, she was my neighbor for many years, we started the We Remember program. And the reason why we did that is that she had her students going out and interviewing veterans. And after 20 kids come to interview me, I told her, I said, hey, I got a program that we can use. And I stole it from John Corona at King High School. We modified it a little bit for us, but we started out with 45 veterans that came to our first event. And the thing that sticks out in my mind the most is that I walked by this one veteran, this gray-haired guy. You know, I still didn't have any gray hair. And he stood up and he shakes my hand and he tells me, he says, I bet there's a few things about me you don't know. And I said, I bet there's a bunch of stuff about you, because I didn't know who he was. And he had a Silver Star lapel pin on. So I said, well, this guy's a hero. He says, I bet you don't know who gave me this. And I said, what war were you in? And he goes, oh, Korea and Vietnam. And I said, well, he could probably be Chesty Puller. He's an icon in the Marine Corps. And he said, yes. So then he sits down, and then I walk around. I'm listening to the stories. I come back, and he says, I bet there's something else you don't know about me. And I'm going, oh, these old retired guys, God, they're always the same. That's what I was thinking. So he stands up and he says, well, when I retired from the Marine Corps as a gunnery sergeant, I went back to college and I got my degree in English. I said, oh, great. And he goes, and I was the first librarian of Don Lugo High School. And I was like, wow. You know, we had veterans from all over Chino for that. And for him to be a former Don Lugo teacher was just amazing. And many of his people that he had taught with showed up when they found out he was there, and they never knew all this about him. Well, anyway, this program became a oral history program, and our juniors come in, and for about 4.5 hours, they interview veterans that show up to the program. Now, veterans, we want as many of you to show up as possible. We wanted this to be a whole Chino thing, but we've got veterans coming in from all over. We feed you a breakfast, kinda, this food, and then we feed you a really good lunch that's cooked up by our ROP class, and it's really, really good. The kids and the instructor, they do a bang-up job, and you know, there's no metal plates. They give you paper plates. Anyway, we really would like to have as many of you show up. All you got to do is give your mini bio to the school, or give it to that tall blonde back there standing up. That's Tara Ragsdale. Give it to her, and we will send out invitations to our program. The kids would love to have you there. Prior to the program starting, the kids, you know, they complain, and they you know, God, do we have to do this? And we tell them yes. They dress it as if they're going to a professional interview. They sit down, and the respect coming out of these kids towards the vets are unbelievable. They have a list of questions they have to ask, and afterwards they have to write a narrative of what they learned about their veteran that day. And they have to send, they don't have to, but they send thank you letters to the veterans. Many of these students come out and say that this was a life-changing event for them, meeting you guys and gals. And I'm just, you know, I'm going, yeah, I know. And the oral history they get is just something that can't be replaced. And the thing is, we had World War II vets showing up, but every one of our World War II vets have passed on. And we still have one Korean War vet that shows up. And some of these veterans that showed up our very first one. And, you know, of course, we have a lot of Vietnam vets, and we have a lot of vets from the Iraqi War and Afghanistan. But we also get veterans that have not seen any kind of action yet. And the kids, you know, they act like they're disappointed that this guy didn't go out and kill a bunch of people. And we tell them they can't ask that kind of a question. But then they learn that there's so many different MOSs out there that anybody can learn in the military. And every year after this, we have many of our students that go down in a list. One year we had 23 students that had enlisted in the military after this event because they were so impressed by what they learned. This year's event is going to be April 16th, correct? 15th, oh, okay. So put that on your schedule and on your calendar that you want to attend this event. And it's held in the gym, and I tell you, the kids would love to have you there. And it has proven to be a great event for the veterans. We have had veterans that have shown up and have never, ever told their story before. We had one year, we were setting up the night before, and this guy comes up to me. He's going to use the restroom in the gym. And he says, "What are you guys doing?" So I explained to him what was happening, and I invited him, and he showed up the next day. One of my students comes up to me and goes, "Where do you know my grandpa from?" And, you know, we tell the students, anybody in your family that's a veteran, give us their address so we can invite them to attend. Well, you know, she's a teenage girl. Grandpa lived in the same house with her. It was funny, and she had never heard his story. And I warned the students, you know, a lot of these veterans are going to get teary-eyed. I said, don't feel bad. Just let them take a breath and get themselves gathered, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes you walk by and the students are crying. And you can tell that they're really getting the story. And when you read their narratives, you know that they've got that oral history deeply implanted in them. And your story will never, ever go away. And again, I would like to see as many of you show up as you can. Because like I said, this started out as a Chino veterans program, and we would like to have as many Chino veterans attend as we can have. I will say this, yesterday was the 244th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. It was great waking up and my wife getting up and saying happy birthday to me. And she says happy birthday to me twice a year. The young Marine that came up and told the history of World War or Veterans Day kind of stole a little bit of my thunder. I had originally planned to tell you about Armistice Day and then how it was converted to Veterans Day, and when President Eisenhower signed it into law being Veterans Day. But I did want to say that, today, we started this event at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month, which was the end of World War I. The other thing about it is that when I was growing up, because I was a little kid in the 50s, my teacher still called it Armistice Day. So I grew up thinking that it was Armistice Day until I got into high school and learned that it was Veterans Day. And I'm sure that some of you sitting out there, I can tell you have the experience that learned that it was Armistice Day while growing up as well. Anyway, I appreciate the city of Chino inviting me to speak. I am a retired teacher, but I feel like the We Remember program is still part of me, and I'm sure that Tara and the people that help her are going to continue it. And like I said, let her know that you want to attend. I appreciate you. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. And if you haven't had an opportunity to attend the We Remember Day, it's incredible. I encourage you to do that. As a tribute to all of our great heroes, I'd like to ask Josiah Naira Vergara of Boy Scout Troop 201 to come forward and read the poem titled Veterans Day.
On Veterans Day, we honor all who answered to a service call. Soldiers young and soldiers old, fought for freedom, brave and bold. Some have lived while others died. All of them deserve our pride. We're proud of all the soldiers who kept thinking of red, white, and blue. They fought for us and all our rights. They fought through many days and nights. And though we may not know each name, we thank all veterans just the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Josiah. We'd now like to honor our great country with another song. Please stand as Andrea Solge, accompanied by Ashley and Alyssa, sing and sign God Bless America.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God
Thank you, ladies. You may be seated. The city of Chino has created so many special traditions over the years, and now to include a Veterans Day ceremony is another strong example of our community's dedication to our military. As we conclude today's ceremony, we'd like to thank the Southern California Military Vehicles Collectors Club for providing the various vehicles on display today. As part of today's ceremony, the Old Schoolhouse Museum, which is located right around the block on B Street, will be open till 2. Please stop by to see not only the various Chino artifacts, but the special military display recognizing Chino veterans. Also, the Chino American Legion, Post 299, will host an open house at the conclusion of today's ceremony. Please feel free to drop by to gather information about the many services available to active and retired service members at the American Legion located on Central Avenue just south of Schaefer. To our military families who have sacrificed so much for us and their loved ones, thank you for your service. Lastly, to our veterans whose service and sacrifice will never be taken for granted by this community, we offer our humblest thank you. And my prayer is that each of us will strive to live a life worthy of all you have done for us and our great country. Thank you all very much, and that concludes our ceremony for today.